To start off our list at number 10, we have the Bunnyman Bridge. In 1904, not far from this bridge, in Fairfax Station, Virginia, was a mental asylum. Nearby residents didn't like the fact that the mental patients were near their new homes, so they had it shut down. While the patients of the asylums were being transported, their bus crashed, and all were found except for one, by the name of Douglas Griffin, who disappeared to the nearby woods. After this disappearance, dead bunnies would be littered all over the forest floors and trees with attempts to consume them. And then finally, on Halloween night, Douglas Griffin struck and killed a group of teenagers that were hanging out near the bridge. He then proceeded to gut and hang all of them as if they were bunnies he had hunted. A police report soon came in about a man in all white with a bunny mask throwing a hatchet at a car, which would eventually give way to this urban legend. Stealing our number 9 spot, we have the Ferry State Plantation House. With 11 spirits calling the Ferry State Plantation House their home, Haunted House seems a fair title for this site. Now used as a museum and educational center, the house also offers Halloween tours called the Stroll of Lost Souls, and is a regular site for ghost hunters and paranormal activity groups. The story goes that this house was used originally as a school, tavern, and eventually a mansion. Once the mansion had burned down in 1828, it was reconstructed by abused and mistreated slaves. The house's many spirits included the woman in white who fell from the stairs, and the slave named Sally Walk, who is said to be still grieving for her late fiance. But the most famous is Grace Sherwood, who is named the Witch of Pungo. She was in fact the last person convicted of witchcraft in Virginia, having to spend 7 years in jail and later being released. When she had passed away, reports say that her body disappeared without a trace, leaving many people to believe that she was truly a witch. Here at our number 8 spot, we have the ghost of Sarah Henry. Patrick Henry, an American patriot who coined the famous term, "Give me liberty or give me death," lived at Scotchtown with his wife Sarah and their 6 children. Everything was normal and fine until Sarah gave birth to their 6 children. Following that, she would show signs of mental illness, and at this time, mental illness was not a defined term and would often be associated with the devil instead. Henry decided to keep his wife hidden in the basement of his home, hidden from the public to protect his family's image, with people often saying that she was possessed by a demon. As time passed, Sarah would become more violent, eventually having to be in a straitjacket. And after her death in 1775, she was buried in an unmarked grave. It's said to this day, a woman in a long white gown appears in and around the house, just standing there, showing that maybe Sarah was not ready to leave her home, even when her family did. Coming in at number 7, we have the Poorhouse Road Tunnel. This tunnel was built in the early 1900s as part of the railway in Virginia that ran between Staunton and Lexington. It didn't take long for the tunnel to acquire a tragic reputation though. The story goes about 2 young girls playing in a nearby woods when all of a sudden a stranger had approached them, appearing friendly at first, but quickly turned sinister and decided to execute both girls. Now it's said that the voices of these girls cry from the darkness of the tunnel, and once you begin to walk through, you may begin to hear the whispers from the girls. Some other haunted reports include the appearance of handprints on cars, fog appearing in photographs when it is not visible, and the sound of disembodied voices. Guess you can say it's a poor choice to travel to Poorhouse Road. Straight out of a Twilight movie, at number 6 we have the Richmond Vampire. However, this is not your ordinary vampire. The story goes that in 1925, the Churchill train tunnel collapsed with workers still inside. Now, the tragedy of that is very real, but surprisingly in the wreckage, a bloody man appeared with jagged teeth and skin hanging off his bones. Everyone had thought it was just a mere survivor of the incident, but here is where it gets weirder. As they got closer to the man quickly jumped and ran away to the nearby Hollywood Cemetery and disappeared into a mausoleum within. They say the vampire still inhabits the cemetery grounds, which has led many satanic and cult groups to visit and attempt to summon the vampire once again. At the middle of our list, we have St. Albans Sanatorium. Before St. Albans was a sanatorium, it was the site of the Draper's Meadow Massacre. Shawnee Indians beheaded, tomahawked, and even bashed in the skulls of the settlers in the 1700s, and took the survivors back with them to their village. Then, during the Civil War, the area was bombarded by artillery during the Battle of Cloyd's Mountain. People claim to see the smoke and hear the sounds of the artillery fire from the Civil War. Once it became a sanatorium, patients suffered inhumane experimental treatments that left some disabled for life due to its controversial treatment and care. The combination of the bloody history of the land along with the misery within the sanatorium created a perfect storm of paranormal activity, which is why St. Albans Sanatorium is considered to be one of the most haunted places in Virginia. Coming in at number 4, we have the Martha Washington Inn. The mansion was built in 1832 and functioned as an all-female college. But when the Civil War was happening, the college was used by the young women to nurse the injured. During this time, there's a story of one of the nurses who played her violin to one of the wounded soldiers. She sat by his bedside all the time, and eventually, they would fall in love. Unfortunately, the soldier succumbed to his injuries and passed away. The nurse was completely devastated upon hearing the news, and in a few weeks, the woman would follow him in death. It was reported that the music of the violin continues to play in the room of the wounded soldier. This site is now a hotel and a spa, but I don't know how relaxed I could be with its dark history of ghosts. With the number 3 spot, we have the lovely Lover's Leap. Before Europeans settled in Virginia, there was a Shawnee brave and a Cherokee girl who met in the forest. There was rising tensions between their two tribes. This was like a version of Romeo and Juliet. These two would meet in secret because of the restrictions placed from each of the tribes. But one day, the man visited the spot where they would always meet, which was situated near Duffield, Virginia, on the scenic cliffs. But this time was different. The woman was on the edge, ready to jump, saying that she wouldn't be able to see each other ever again. With that being said, the man decided that the only way they could be together was to kiss and jump off the cliff together. Now, people who visit the area say that they've seen the shadowy figures of a couple on the edge of the cliff, while some say they feel the strong urge to jump off when they come with their significant other. Taking our number 2 spot, we have the Crawford Road. Crawford Road is one of the most haunted roads in Virginia. One of the stories tells of a group of friends that were cruising late at night until they decided to turn up the fun by going down Crawford Road. While driving down the road, they joked, laughed, and sang songs from their brand new CD. Everything had been fine until they had reached the bridge. The track they were listening to on the CD let out a high-pitched, obnoxious screeching sound. The noise lasted for about 10 seconds until they were far enough from the bridge. Then the noise stopped and the CD played as normal. Another incident involved a wedding that took place in the area. The bride was not a happy one and regretted all of her actions, which led her to hang herself by the bridge. As people drove down this road, they would report seeing this woman in a white wedding gown standing on top of the bridge only to jump off and disappear. Now, taking our top spot in our top 10 scary Virginia urban legends, we have the Battle of Cold Harbor. Said to be one of the most haunted battlefields in the United States, it was here that over 150,000 men fought a long, gruesome war, which claimed the lives of over 15,000 men. As the war finished, it was reported that the lack of medical assistance led to dugouts being crammed with both the living and the dead, and those who passed away couldn't even get proper burials. The conditions of the battlefield made this place a living hell for those who had to fight in it. And now it's reported that those who visit experience paranormal occurrences, such as smelling the distinct scent of burned gunpowder or a fog that would appear and disappear in the area, which could be resembling the thick gun smoke from the past battle. Other reports hear the cries and the screams of the dying soldiers waiting for someone to bury them properly. Restless souls are scattered throughout the park, which is why it makes sense that people get an overwhelming sense of sorrow and fear when they walk on that field. Starting us right at number 10, we have the Otterbein Cemetery. It was during the 1840s that James Henry was faced with a dilemma. He had been courting 2 women, Rachel Hodge and Mary Angle. He couldn't decide which one to marry until one day, while going home, Henry ended up falling asleep on the horse he was riding on. The horse would then stop in front of Mary's house. James saw this as a sign and married Mary shortly after. As a wedding gift, James gave Mary the horse that led him there. Their love was so strong, but short-lived, when Mary died in 1845. She was then buried in Otterbein Cemetery, and as fate would have it, Henry would go back and court the other girl, Rachel. But shortly after their new marriage, people began noticing a strange outline of a bloody horseshoe on his late wife's tombstone. James took this as Mary's objection to the new marriage. And perhaps this was true, because days after, strange sounds and sightings were reported in the cemetery. James Henry would be found in his barn, dead, with a mark of a horseshoe visibly on his forehead. Creeping at our number 9 spot, we have Satan's Hollow. Beyond the woods, in a quiet blue ash community, some say exists a portal to hell named Satan's Hollow. Being part of an old sewage system, the tunnels are said to be haunted by a shadow man and other angry spirits. Supernatural markings are seen all over the tunnel walls. Deep inside the tunnels are a supposed altar room where they would commit violent rituals, including sacrificing animals and even humans. Over the years, several ghost hunters and paranormal investigators have visited this site, claiming to have communicated with spirits. Coming in at number 8, we have Athens Asylum. This mental asylum stood from 1874 up until 1993. However, some pretty scary stuff occurred within these walls. Patients were mistreated, physically abused, not fed, strapped to their beds, and even lobotomized, which caused many patients to suffer from life-changing side effects and disabilities. One particular patient named Margaret Schilling went missing in 1979 for 42 days. Her corpse would be later found in an abandoned area in the hospital. The odd thing was that her body was found naked, with her clothes folded neatly beside her, and then her body began rotting so bad that it left a permanent stain behind that could still be seen to this day. In attempts to hide the stain, workers found it impossible to clean up the imprint, and now it's said that the abused patients of this asylum still haunt the building, including the spirit of Margaret. At our number 7 spot, we have the Bloody Bridge. In the 1850s, a bridge that crosses the Miami-Erie Canal was the site of a horrific murder. The story begins with a couple named Bill Jones and Minnie Warren. They started off head over heels over one another, so it was a big surprise when Minnie ended the relationship all of a sudden. Bill was devastated. Meanwhile, the girl seemed to have moved on pretty quickly and began dating a man by the name of Jack Billings instead, and Bill would become a rage-fueled person with full intent to plot his revenge. So on one cold night in 1852, he waited near the bridge that crossed the canal. When the new couple was walking over the bridge, he jumped out of nowhere, slicing Jack's head clean off using an axe, and startled Minnie, which made her fall from the bridge, drowning soon after. This would cause many locals to name it the Bloody Bridge. At our number 6 spot, we have the Loveland Frogman. This is not so much a scary urban legend, but rather weird, so I couldn't ignore it. The Loveland Frogmen are 4 feet bipedal frogs with a leathery skin and webbed feet. I know, it sounds super silly, but the people who actually encountered the Loveland Frogmen didn't find them funny by any means. Instead, they would shoot farmers, businessmen, and even policemen on sight. One report even said a policeman shot and killed one. Everyone's description of the creature was the same, except the height, making many to believe that there are more than one frogman out there. In the hump of our list, we have the Melon Heads. In the suburbs of Michigan, Ohio, locals fear of humanoids called Melon Heads. First theorized in the 1970s, melon heads are said to be completely bald with misshapen bulbous heads, deformed arms and legs, teeth like daggers, and luminous red eyes. The legend goes that a doctor named Crow and his wife lived in the woods of Ohio. In a nearby orphanage, he convinced them to kidnap and then conduct experiments on a group of orphan children suffering from hydrocephalus, a condition that caused the kid's head to swell to 3 times the normal size. The tests were both malicious and an ill-fated attempt to save them. These experiments would cause even more swelling and give them an appearance of a melon head. After days of torture, the kids would decide to kill Dr. Crow, and it's said that these kids still survive off the nearby land, only emerging at nights. Taking our number 4 spot, we have the Defiance Werewolf. In the summer of 1972, the people of Defiance, Ohio were claiming that they were being terrorized by a lone werewolf. The sightings of this werewolf would be typically at nights nearby the railroad tracks. The beast was reported to be 7 to 9 feet tall, very hairy, and wielding a club. It said that 2 men were working on the tracks at night. One of the 2 men, Ted Davis, would report to police that he was attacked by a half-man, half-dog creature. Luckily for locals, after the summer, the beast almost seemed to vanish out of existence. But the story still lingers, and perhaps a werewolf is still out there, hiding. All the way at number 3, we have the Gore Orphanage. In Vermilion, Ohio, there's a story about an orphanage. During the 1800s, a mysterious fire broke out in a building, trapping all inside, leading to at least 50 deaths. The town was horrified by the event and refused to allow a replacement orphanage to be built on the site. Ohio residents wanted nothing more than just to forget about the tragedy and move on. Out of sight, out of mind. or so they thought. The fire itself is said to have left a stain on the area forever, with reports saying that if you try and approach the old orphanage, you'll be met with many children ghosts roaming around the land and running in the forest. The whereabouts of the remains of the orphanage are never clearly shared, and it appears that the location will forever be a mystery. However, there is a road called Gore Orphanage Road in Ohio, so I think it would be best to start there if you want to see some child apparitions. Here at number 2, we have the Crybaby Bridge. In Salem, Ohio, there is a bridge just off of Egypt Road. Over the years, this bridge has collected many terrifying stories. But the stories are similar in the sense that it involves a mother and a baby child. Sometime in the 1970s, a young couple decided to picnic near the bridge with their baby. They slowly got distracted by the surroundings and by each other that they didn't notice the baby wandering off away from them. It was not until the baby began to cry, the couple realized their mistake and quickly chased after the sound of their baby. They were too late. The baby had fallen into the water and passed away. In an attempt to save the baby, but mostly devastated by her loss, the mother decided to jump into the water and met the same fate as their baby. Now legend has it that if you go to this bridge, you can hear the ghostly cries of a baby coming underneath the bridge. Taking our number 1 spot of our list, we have Helltown, Ohio. Boston Mills, now known as Helltown, was bought out by the US government to make way for the Cuyahoga Valley National Park. However, rumor has it that this town was closed down because of an accident chemical leak, causing citizens to mutate. To this day, the town remains completely abandoned. However, people who visited the area have reported seeing many disfigured, mutated people hiding throughout the area. And to make matters worse, apparently there is a satanic church located at the town center. The area is littered with even more dark legends, including an old abandoned school bus where a series of murders took place in. It is said that if you peek into the windows, you can see the ghosts of the kids or even the killer behind it. Starting off at number 10, we have the ever popular Hell's Gate Bridge in Oxford, Alabama. This is no London Bridge, despite the fact that it is falling down, but a more sinister bridge that harbors the characteristics of a living hell. Hell's Gate Bridge got its name because it's said that when you stop on the bridge and glance over your shoulder, the road begins to resemble a fiery gates of hell. And if you're not scared from a mere opinion, in 1950, a young couple's car drove directly off the bridge, killing both of them. And it's said if you stop at the bridge with your lights off, a member of the couple enter the vehicle and leave a wet spot on your seats. The bridge has now been cemented off due to its poor condition and to stop those who are too curious for their own liking. At number 9, we have the Alaskan Triangle. Imagine the Bermuda Triangle, but cold and on land, and then we have the Alaska Triangle. This is a piece of untouched wilderness where mystery lingers and the unknown spreads. This triangle connects from Alaska's largest city of Anchorage to Juneau in the southeast and Barrow in the north. Over the past 50 years, over 20,000 people and several planes have gone missing in the area. The mystery of the disappearance is inconclusive, but many of the surrounding indigenous tribes, including the Tling tribe, claim that restless demons and trickster spirits lure people to an icy death. Specifically, there is a shape-shifting demon called the Kushtaka, described to approach those who are lost or weak. And once your trust grows with them, they will drag you deeper into the wilderness and tear you limb for limb, preventing your soul from reincarnating. In other words, this place is not the most ideal backpacking spot. You can't believe what we have at number 8. We have the ghost of Stow Lake. Situated by the largest body of water that borders the beloved Golden Gate Park in California, a young mother and her baby daughter decided to take a stroll and enjoy the scenery. Eventually, the mother would be distracted while speaking to another lady in the park. Due to this distraction, her baby daughter rolled away and ended up in the lake. Like any mother, she started to panic and jumped in the lake attempting to save her daughter. This was the last time the woman was seen. Now, there are reports of women sobbing when there's no one around. And if that wasn't eerie, some have even reported seeing this woman still looking for her baby in the water. And for a bad idea, you can summon her by saying, white lady, I have your baby," 3 times and she will appear. However, this is not recommended. At number 7, we have Charmander. In 1948, in Ojai Valley, located in California, there was a large brush fire which destroyed the majority of the valley along with many homes around the area. This fire's devastation made it impossible for those in the affected area to receive any sort of help, which kick-started this urban legend. During the time of the fire, a man and his son who lived in an isolated cabin in the valley found themselves fighting for their own survival. Their house burned down, the father ended up dying from the fire, and the son acquired several deep burns on their skin. This drove the son completely insane, and with his enraged mindset, he hung his father and skinned all of the burned skin from his body. The son eventually disappeared in the darkness of the woods, and it is said that those who wander carelessly in Ojai Valley will encounter the horribly burned charred man, and he will attempt to tear their skin off, just as he did to his father. Coming in at number 6, we have the Dog Boy. Despite the lighthearted name, its story is truly traumatic. In a small Arkansas town was a child named Gerald Bettis, who was supported by 2 loving parents. However, this love would turn to sour. At a young age, Gerald would kidnap and torture dogs, giving him the name, and eventually would thirst for something more sinister. He would move on to humans, specifically his parents. He ended up torturing his parents by imprisoning them in their own home, keeping them there for years. Eventually, the father would pass away in the home, ending his tortured existence, and it's still believed that this house is still haunted from the spirit of Gerald and his father, with consistent light flickers, moving objects, and cold spots. Taking our number 5 spot, we have the Dark Watchers. The Santa Lucia Mountains, or the Santa Lucia Range, is a rugged mountain range located in the coastal area of Central California. For many years, people have looked up at these tall peaks and spotted tall, cloaked figures looking down at them, and in the blink of an eye, they're gone. These 7 to 15 feet tall mystical entities stand motionless, wearing only a black coat and a broad brim hat. Sightings were reported all the way back from the 1700s, when the Spanish had just arrived on the land and noticed these tall, dark watchers on the mountain. Despite these entities not doing any physical harm, they're always watching people in the area, making them feel worried and scared of the feeling of not being alone. Here we have at number 4, the Hugging Molly. In Abbeville, Alabama, there is said to be a phantom-like 7-foot tall woman dressed in all black with a large brim hat. If you ever saw the Woman in Black movie, you could get the idea of what I mean. Legends say she will appear to children, squeeze them tight, and then scream in their ear. Other than this, she is said not to have harmed them. There are also tales of how she hugs some to death. Their intentions to hug is said to be from losing her only daughter and hugging her while she had already passed. Who knew a hug could be so bad? Stealing the number 3 spot, we have the infamous Skinwalker. In Arizona, there is a mythical creature which can shed its own skin, like how a snake sheds. Skinwalkers are humans who possess immense supernatural power, including the power to transform into any animal. According to legend, these evil beings have the choice to choose any animal they desire, but their most common animal forms are a fox, goat, owl, coyote, cougar, dog, and a wolf. These supernatural beings are said to have started as medicine men who eventually used their powers for evil, turning them to something worse. It is said that powerful skinwalkers have the ability to steal the body of its victims by locking eyes with them. The skinwalker can control that person and become them at will. Once it controls you, it has complete control and has the power to make the victim do things they normally wouldn't do. Skinwalkers are a sign of those who decide to choose evil over good. At our number 2 spot, we have Homie the Clown. In Illinois during the 1990s, there was a clown going by the name of Homie, who would be spotted going through the streets to lure children in his sketchy van. If you ever saw the free candy van meme, this is the unofficial origin story. His name originated from the beloved clown character in the early 90s sketch comedy show named In Living Color, who was an ex-convict who would carry a sock for rebellious children. Except for this clown, children would not get a sock for punishment, but would get something more sinister, more brutal. Eventually, the police would be involved, but would be skeptical about a killer kidnapping clown. Homie the Clown would eventually fizzle out of existence and may still be out there in his van, awaiting unsuspecting children. Finally, at number 1, we have the Riverdale Road. Definitely not the teen drama show Riverdale. There's an 11-mile stretch of road located in Thornton, Colorado, with almost all forms of supernatural reported, from ghostly beings to talking animals to devil worshippers. Just off the road, there's a place called Joggers Hill, where it's said that a car hit a jogger and left him to die, which created a revengeful spirit that is reported to attack any of those who try to enjoy the scenery. On this road, there's also a Camaro that drives around at night with only one headlight on that attempts to race with you. However, this race will be to your death, as this black Camaro is the exact same one in the fatal 1970s car accident that was completely totaled. If this wasn't terrifying enough, the history of this road showed that many slaves were tortured and abused on the farms surrounding the road, and it is said that if you look close enough, you can see the bodies of the hanged slaves in the trees. So next time you take a night ride to relieve your stress, make sure the road you're on is not called Riverdale Road. Thank you so much for watching. This was your top 10 scary American urban legends, and we'll see you guys next time.